Deadpool 2 is directed by David Leitch.
Yeah, and it stars.
Oh my god.
I forgot the people's names. Alright, so.
Ready? Oh my goodness.
Julian Innocent. Dude, stop jumping. Okay. Jake, you're jumping over here.
I wonder if you made him
string.
He jumps so high, man. It's freaking adorable, though. Have you ever seen him jump?
Deadpool 2 is directed by David Leitch.
Yeah, and it stars Ryan Reynolds, Josh Brolin, Zazie Beetz, and Julian Dennison. And in this movie, a time traveler named Cable decides to come to the present in order to kill a mutant child who Deadpool tries to rescue by creating the X-Force. Oh my god, keep shutting it.
So overall, I sort of like the first one a little more than this one because the first one is a little more small scale, is a more straightforward movie. This one, you could tell they had a bigger budget. And I feel like they handled the bigger type of movie, but I feel like there's certain aspects that it didn't do well.
Yeah, I would say overall the jokes are actually really funny. Most of the jokes, I would say there are quite a bit that actually didn't land very well. There was quite a bit of jokes where I didn't laugh at all, and actually just the people in the audience didn't laugh.
Yeah, but at the same time, I didn't find them that cringy. It just wasn't. It was just jokes that I didn't find that funny.
Yeah, and like if there's one big thing I loved about this movie, and there's a lot of trade-offs with this second movie and the first movie, which, you know, so there's things that this movie actually did right that this first one didn't do, you know, and that is this movie actually gave Deadpool more of a character. You actually start getting more into his mind. And it kind of starts going a little bit more towards the comics of who Deadpool is as a person. Because he's not just this guy who throws out these quick whips all the time. You know, he's actually like a person, you know, with emotion. So that's what I really liked about this movie.
Yeah, because I feel like most of the general audiences are misinterpreting who Deadpool is as a character. He's not just like a joke character, which has a big part of who he is. But at the same time, like you said, he's an actual person. He has depth to him.
Overall, this movie I felt like was really well put together. The editing was really good. The only problem, Jake, man, probably about the first 30 minutes felt a little weird. It felt a little rocky. And it's not. I did like the entire movie, even that first 30 minutes. It just like the editing felt kind of weird at certain times.
Yeah, yeah, and I felt like there's a lot of tonal shifts, which I didn't mind the tone shifts because there's like comedy and then there's drama and there's emotion. But the beginning just didn't know really how to like switch between them. It felt really weird.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest issues with Deadpool, because with Deadpool, there's some things that there's some emotional events that happen at the beginning. And I think that's one of the hardest things to do with a Deadpool movie. Because the first one didn't really have that many emotional parts in it, but this one did. And so whenever you're trying to switch between having these emotional parts and also being funny like Deadpool is, because you still want to stay true to the character, you are going to have those tonal shifts. So it's kind of that they didn't really balance this out correctly.
Yeah, and at times I think they sort of try to go bigger than what their budget allowed them to do, because some of the CGI looks sort of bad. And just throughout the movie, there's certain parts that, especially some of the characters where they were fighting, it just looks really fake.
Yeah, and I want to try my best not to compare it to the first one, because the first one was like near perfect. But the first one really almost had an advantage to itself, because there's a lot of times because of their budget, they weren't allowed to put certain scenes in, so they took out certain scenes in order to add another joke that really helped it out. But this one, I think it was just given just enough budget in order for them to feel a little too good about it.
Yeah, which I think that's the reason why Tim Miller, the original director of the first movie, left, because he was wanting to make another small movie like the first one was.
Like I said, the beginning of the movie is really weirdly edited, but there's a part whenever they're in the trailer. There's a part when they're like an helicopter. After that scene, the movie starts getting really good. Overall, the comedy really works for this movie. Even in some of the non-funny lines, it's not really like it's funny. It just kind of fits the character. Also, I really feel like a lot of it has to do with Ryan Reynolds, because Ryan Reynolds is just Deadpool. Like in real life, you see Ryan Reynolds, he just acts like Deadpool. That's why he's like he is the legitimately best choice possible for Deadpool.
Yeah, and Josh Brolin as Cable is actually really good too.
Yeah,
which is weird because he's playing Thanos in Infinity War, and now he's Cable. So it's a pretty big summer for him.
Yeah, and it seems like this movie really just a lot of people are really casted correctly. From the first movie, it's casted amazingly. This movie, for the most part, it seems like the characters are casted very well. I would say the only one I didn't completely love was the guy who played the kid, and I said his name at the beginning, but I can't remember what it is. But his acting, it wasn't bad. It was just strange. There was times whenever I felt like I don't really think he knew how to do anger that well. Like other than his angry acting, which is a lot of his acting is angry acting in this movie. It's
So like Michael B. Jordan, Black Panther.
yeah. I would say he's a kid, so he does show promise. So he can get that better. But in this movie, I just felt like he wasn't completely ready. But I don't really want to say that he did bad because it didn't ruin anything. The scenes that he was in, I didn't feel like it was fake. It just was very strange acting.
You reminded me a lot of Rebel Wilson.
Another character that's pretty perfectly casted, I believe. And there was a huge controversy about Domino's character being casted, but I really feel like Zazie Beetz is like a phenomenal actress in this movie. I haven't really seen a lot in her. I've heard about the show Atlanta.
She was in Geostorm.
Oh, that's right, Geostorm. Not the best representation. She didn't do bad in that movie either, though. But I've heard about Atlanta, that movie with Donald Glover.
Sure.
Yeah, show with Donald Glover. I've heard that show's really good. I need to start watching that. But she actually did fantastic in this movie. A lot of scenes just kind of felt awkward. And maybe not particular like actual full scenes, but just little sequences that would happen in the movie. They felt awkward and they felt weird, like they were kind of out of place. Almost like it seems like sometimes they needed a way to like make the scene make sense, so they just threw something in at random times, you know. And it made the movie make sense, but just the scenes just felt like they weren't fully rehearsed.
And the story for this movie, even though it's a lot like Terminator, it's still pretty refreshing. It doesn't feel like it's taking bits and pieces from other movies. It feels like its own story.
The one thing I do love about this movie is a lot of things in this movie are unpredictable. There's especially one scene that's freaking hilarious, but like it just... You don't expect it at all. But even other than that scene, there's a lot of times in this movie where you really don't expect certain things to happen, and they just do. And it really is like a breath of fresh air at certain times. Maybe not as much as the first one, but after you've watched a whole bunch of other superhero movies that kind of become the same thing, this one really is that breath of fresh air that we needed.
And don't forget to stay for the mid-credits scene because that was pretty amazing. There's two of them, but the second one is a more amazing one.
So overall, this movie is very enjoyable. It really stays true to the characters. It just, although I loved it, there was just a few things that really did have issues and really were some pretty big issues. So I'm going to go ahead and say that Deadpool 2 is 85% awesome.
Yeah, I love this movie. There's a lot of parts that actually made me laugh out loud, which if a comedy can do that, it's a pretty good comedy. There are just a bunch of parts that I just felt like threw the movie off and just brought it down just a little bit. So I'm going to say that Deadpool 2 is 82% awesome.
Alright guys, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also comment below and let us know what you thought about Deadpool 2. Maybe, like, even if you maybe liked it better than the first one, let us know that. Maybe even tell us your favorite joke from this movie.
And don't forget to follow us on social media. We have Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all at 2 Awesome Men.
And as always, thank you so much for watching, and you will see us later.